Right, we now come to the urgent question. Matt Weston.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for granting this urgent question. It is to ask the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster if he will make a statement on the United States national security strategy and its implications for the United Kingdom's relationship with the United States.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for his urgent question, and I'm sure the whole House would agree that the UK-US relationship has delivered security and prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic for more than a century. When it comes to the special relationship we share with the US, that is built on a foundation of deep defence, security and trading links, and unique cultural and people-to-people ties. Both the Prime Minister and President Trump have repeatedly emphasised their commitment to continuing to strengthen it. Of course, it is for the United States to set their own national security strategy, as it is for any government. The strategy contains many shared objectives: resolving conflicts, tackling migration, and ensuring economic security. But it will not surprise the House that on some areas we take a different view. When it comes to European security, what we see is a strong Europe coming together to defend Ukraine, with the UK helping to lead the coalition of the willing of more than 30 countries. And we see a Europe that is stepping up on defence spending, with the UK committed to reach 5% of GDP on defence spending by 2035. It's right that Europe steps up. That is in our interests. Europe is united behind Ukraine and united behind our long-standing values of freedom and democracy, and we will always stand up for those values. Our bond delivers on both sides of the Atlantic, Mr. Speaker. Our trading relationship is worth over £330 billion annually. We have over £1.2 trillion in mutual investment, and our businesses support over 1 million jobs in each other's countries. The UK will continue to work closely with the US to strengthen Euro-Atlantic security through NATO, support Ukraine, and deepen our cooperation on emerging technologies and economic security. The strength of our relationship allows us to discuss and debate areas where we disagree. So we continue to strengthen this vital and mutually beneficial relationship with the United States. And during the state visit, we announced over £250 billion in two-way investment, a powerful demonstration of the deepening economic ties between the UK and the US, and signed a first-of-its-kind UK-US technology prosperity deal that will supercharge our cooperation across areas including AI, quantum and nuclear.
Matt Weston.
Mr. Speaker, last weekend the US administration published its national security strategy, and it is the clearest articulation yet of President Trump's ideological foundation. The whole House should be under no illusion. The United States consensus that has led the Western world since the Second World War appears shattered. It refers to Europe facing, and I quote, civilizational erasure, and it will be unrecognizable in 20 years. It vows to, and I quote again, to help Europe correct its current trajectory and promote patriotic European parties. The prospect of United States interference in the democratic politics of Europe, I believe, is chilling. The President's comments on Tuesday further demonstrate this. He called European leaders weak and singled out one of the United Kingdom's mayors as, and I quote, horrible, vicious and disgusting. But sometimes, Mr. Speaker, what is not said is as important as is what is said. In this case, the absence of condemnation for Russia is extraordinary, though not surprising. Given certain UK dependencies on the United States, this leaves the United Kingdom especially vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, I do not expect the government to reorient its entire economic and security strategy here today, nor do I expect them to publicly condemn President Trump's strategy. But I would ask the Minister the following. Can she assure the House that the government will continue to update its national security approach to reflect the changing strategic and geopolitical context? And will the government prioritise sovereign capabilities and ensure that a clear definition is provided of which capabilities the United Kingdom seeks to onshore to provide clearer signalling to our industry?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend, and he will know, as the House does, that national security is our first priority. And it is important that we continue to discuss all national security issues on an ongoing basis with all of our allies, and particularly the United States. Ultimately, it is for the United States to set their strategy. And indeed, when it comes to Europe, there are some things we agree with, like the importance of sustaining freedom and security. And there are also elements that it won't surprise the House that we disagree with. And it is important that we maintain our relationship closely with the United Kingdom, with the United States, on whom we work on a whole range of issues: our security economically, our security in terms of migration. And it is important as well that we recognise some of the issues that were raised, including in migration, where it is essential that we have a migration system that is controlled, that is fair, and that is managed, and that is what the public will rightfully expect. And he did mention the comments about the Mayor of London, and I do wish to say that the Mayor of London is doing a great job delivering for London, and it won't surprise you that I disagree with those comments that have been made.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The US strategy makes it even more important that the UK remains a cornerstone of European and global defence. And with threats to us and our allies only growing, the Conservative Party is clear that we would hit 3% of GDP on defence spending by the end of this Parliament. So, as it is abundantly clear that we need to step up against the threat posed by Russia, and we need a government that is serious about reaching 3% of GDP defence spending by the end of this Parliament, can the Minister confirm whether it is only the government's ambition to reach 3%, or if the Treasury actually has a funded plan to do so? Now, the US strategy is particularly clear about the nature of the Chinese Communist Party regime, whereas our government seems to be going cap in hand to Beijing to bail out its failed economic policies. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've seen reports that the government is likely to approve China's super embassy spy hub. So can the Minister confirm whether the US has expressed a concern to the government about the potential approval of this application? And specifically on Ukraine, all of us want to see this war end. It is an unjust and illegal war started by Putin. But an end to this conflict, or any potential settlement, has to be one that involves the Ukrainian people and secures justice and a lasting peace for them. And a lasting peace is not about ceding territory. So can she update the House on specifically what the UK government is currently doing to leverage British influence for Ukraine at this critical time?
Minister.
I thank the Shadow Minister for his contribution, and indeed he is right to have said what the Prime Minister has also stated, that the UK-US relationship has been the cornerstone of our security and prosperity, indeed for over a century, and one that we will never turn away from. And indeed, during President Trump's historic state visit in September, he praised the unbreakable bond between the UK and the US. This House has heard our commitments to increasing spend on defence as a percentage of GDP, and we stand by those commitments. And more broadly, the Prime Minister has also been clear about the need for Europe to step up and increase defence spending. And that is why we have committed, as part of our NATO agreement, to increase defence spending, and he will have heard that on the record, and we stand by those commitments. I will just say as well that in relation to Ukraine, it is absolutely right that we seek to secure peace in Ukraine, and in fact that could be done tomorrow if Russia chose to end its illegal invasion of Ukraine. And indeed, it seems at the moment there is only one side of that war that is serious about peace, and that is Ukraine. But we commend and we fully support President Trump's efforts towards securing peace in Ukraine. We fully support that process, and indeed on Monday the Prime Minister welcomed President Zelensky, President Macron and Chancellor Merz to Downing Street to discuss the latest progress. And I will just perhaps say this, Mr. Speaker. It is, as Secretary of State Rubio has also said, that we need a just and lasting peace and a sovereign Ukraine.
Dame Chiamore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that my honourable friend is far too discreet to set out honestly her assessment of President Trump's contribution to civilization. But could she reassure my constituents, angered, insulted, or just plain bemused by the pronouncements in the US national security strategy that whilst we celebrate our cultural and economic ties with the United States and our relationship with the people of the United States, our sovereignty is not dependent on them, and specifically that any capability which is dependent on United States, whether it be in AI, in quantum, in defence, that is not a sovereign capability.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for her comments. Let me say this, that I'm incredibly proud of our country, my country. I know that migration is an essential element of Britain's national story. We are a thriving multicultural society, and I am proud of that. And we respect the US as a democracy. But friends and allies should respect each other's choices and traditions. And if I could just make one comment as well, that in relation to how we work together, we do so in a spirit, and we must do so in a spirit of respect, recognising our mutual interests and our long-standing relationship, and that robust political debate can always take place in an environment of respect. If I could just make mention of the Chinese embassy that was raised by the Shadow Minister as well, to say that the US is our closest ally and we liaise with them closely on a wide range of issues, including in relation to China. They will know, Mr. Speaker, that a final decision on this case will be made in due course by ministers in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and the timing of the decision is a matter for them.
Tom Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with this statement, Trump's White House has driven a coach and horses through the UK's own national security strategy and strategic defence review. Trump has stated that the US has no enduring commitment to NATO, no support for fair and open international trade, no willingness to cooperate in international organisations or abide by international law. The document shows derision for Europe, including the UK, for failing to share Trump's divisive nationalist ideology, while Russia is seen as a great power with whom the US intends to carve up Ukraine. No wonder the Kremlin said it was, and I quote, consistent with our vision. So I ask the Minister, will the government commit to an urgent review of the UK's approach and to making a statement to the House in January on the government's strategic response to this new Trump doctrine? Will she take the opportunity to state clearly that her government will not tolerate interference by America in the domestic politics of the UK? And will she commit that the forthcoming elections bill will restrict funding to UK political parties from sources outside the UK?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his comments, and I think to say that I do disagree with him on some aspects of what he raised, and it is important to say that national security is our first priority. It is a matter on which we discuss regularly with the US, matters of interest around the world. It is a partnership that we work on security through NATO, through Five Eyes, and a range of other international institutions. And it is important to recognise the efforts that President Trump has also made in securing peace around the world, whether that is his role in Gaza and how he is working in a process that we support to secure peace in Ukraine. And it is important that whilst we disagree with some aspects of what has been in the national security strategy. It is for the US to set their own strategy, and it is for us to have our own strategy, our own values, and indeed friends and allies should respect each other's choices and traditions.
Thank you, sir. The language of the US national security strategy was deeply regrettable, and frankly it was not hard to see the rhymes with some extreme right-wing tropes that date back to the 1930s. But of course the publication of this document came at the same time as the collapse of talks to join the European Union SAFE programme to help boost rearmament. So it is now essential that the government specifies, as my honourable friend said, the sovereign capabilities that we have decided to adopt in this country. It is essential that we now implement the recommendations of our committee's report on economic security. And it is now vital, I'm afraid, that we begin opening talks with our closest neighbours in the European Union about what kind of economic security union could actually draw our countries close together and help provide the economic support and the economic growth that rearmament is going to require.
I thank my right honourable friend, and indeed for the work he does on his committee, which very much informs the work of government. And I will agree with him that it is important for the UK to continue to develop its own capabilities and to make sure that we are working closely with allies on security, not just in the defence of making sure that the UK is strongly defended, but also in the interests of prosperity and security across the world.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spent about 5 years on and off working in the Ministry of Defence, and we had a saying there, which was, plans without resources are hallucinations. Now, on the 8th of September, the then Minister of State at the Ministry of Defence told the member for Huntingdon that the Defence Investment Plan would be published, and I quote, in the autumn, unquote. Some people think that the autumn ends on the 30th of November. Others, if we're being generous, say it's on the 21st of December. So is the Minister going to tell us today when the Defence Investment Plan is going to be published, given that, in her words, national security is the government's first priority? Very good.
Yeah. Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and indeed those are matters that I'm sure will be brought to the House by the relevant ministers. But may I just, if I could just make this point, that we recognise the importance of boosting our defence and security cooperation, and indeed with European allies who are strong in their defence of Ukraine. And we do that, and we are doing that through bilateral partnership agreements with France, with Germany, with Poland, and our security and defence partnership with the EU, and our continued leadership of the Joint Expeditionary Force and the Coalition of the Willing in support of Ukraine. And as I have said already, I'm sure that that will be a matter that will be the House will be updated on by the relevant ministers.
Richard Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the heart of this strategy, laid out in black and white, is Trump's explicit revival of the reactionary idea that Latin America is the United States' backyard. We've already seen the consequences of that mindset in its escalations against oil-rich Venezuela. But Trump's also adopting a similar approach to European countries, including our own, making it clear that he will be stirring up far-right forces here to serve US objectives. Isn't it now more urgent than ever that instead of blindly following US foreign policies we have so often done to disastrous effect in the past, we forge an independent foreign policy of our own based on peace, cooperation and mutual development, respect for sovereignty and international law as envisaged in the United Nations Charter?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and indeed in relation to our foreign policy, that is our foreign policy and will always remain so.
Christine Jolly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the comments of the Minister, there is profound shock not just in this place but in the public, and confusion about what Trump's statements mean for our future defence and the future defence of our democracy. We have parliamentary elections in Scotland next year. Is he going to be promoting something in Scotland which is not necessarily in our national interest? But can you specifically give us guidance on whether we are sure that Trump will, after this statement, abide by Article 5?
I thank the honourable member for her question. Indeed, President Trump has been clear on the US's commitment to NATO and Article 5, and the United States remains a strong, reliable and vital ally for the United Kingdom. And the relationship between us helps us protect the British people every day. We and European allies have shown that we are also serious about taking greater responsibility for defence and security in Europe. And this includes allies' historic commitment to 5% of GDP on defence and security to deliver a stronger, fairer and more effective NATO.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A century ago, members across this House failed. They failed to prepare for war and therefore they failed to prevent one. And what followed was the most destructive war in the history of humankind. Tens of millions dead, hundreds of millions more stories of unspeakable grief. Today we once again face war in Europe, and once again it falls to us, this generation of politicians, to help prevent a war. And to do so, the only way to do so is to prepare for one. To make it clear to Putin that any invasion would be so ruinous as to be unthinkable for him. So can the Minister assure me and assure this House that this government, in a defence economic strategy, will yes, scale up the production of munitions today, but also, if it came to it, be able to scale up that production, allocate labour as well as energy to produce the munitions, the tanks and everything else we need to win a war against Putin in Europe?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his very important question, and indeed the Prime Minister has also been clear about the need for Europe to step up and increase defence spending, and indeed we have made our own commitments in that respect, and this is extremely important as well, Mr. Speaker. It is important as well that the UK continues to work closely with the US to strengthen Euro-Atlantic security through NATO, to support Ukraine and to deepen our cooperation on emerging technologies and economic security. And our commitment to NATO and to European security is ironclad.
Stephen Gill.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the US National Security Strategy says in black and white what many of us have been warning about for years now. The Minister was right to say that we Europeans need to step up. So can she tell me why, that as Canada joins the SAFE defence procurement scheme that far outstrips any resource the UK could provide, that would make us more secure and provide for more jobs, why Ottawa can reach that agreement but the UK can't?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. What I will say is that we continue to work not just with the US and our European allies, but with allies across the world to ensure that we have the security and the defence capabilities that we need, not just for today, but for the future. And we continue to discuss all aspects of security with nations across the world and also including Canada.
Graham.
Thank you much, Mr. Speaker. Last week I was pleased to take part in a cross-party delegation to Washington to discuss matters of defence, security and development. Every one of those meetings, which were with both Republicans and Democrats and from across the political spectrum, the importance of the UK-US relationship was emphasised, particularly on defence and security, and a clear sense that that would outlast any one administration or president. This was demonstrated again this week with the excellent news of my own constituency, where Virginia-class submarines for the United States will be constructed partly at Rosyth in Fife. Does she agree with me that the relationship we have with the United States is so deep and so long-standing that it will outlast any one administration or president, and will she continue to work with the United States wherever possible to be constructive? Thank you.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and indeed the US is an indispensable ally. We have an enduring partnership that is built on deep security, intelligence and cultural ties, and it remains the cornerstone of our collective prosperity and security.
James McCleary.
The United States' new national security strategy was smuggled out
in the middle of the night, which is fitting for such a bleak and dystopian vision of the world. In it, there's some very sharp criticism of European allies, including our internal democratic processes, and a prioritisation of future interference in European democratic processes to promote a specific ideology and worldview. So what is the government going to do to protect the integrity of British democratic processes from a president who has a track record of denying democratic outcomes in his own country?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, ultimately it is for the US to set their own strategy, but when it comes to Europe, there are some things we agree with, like the importance of sustaining freedom and security, but there are some things that we have disagreed with. And what we see is a strong Europe that is coming together, that is working together on security and indeed on prosperity, and working together to increase spending on defence. It is important that we have that, and it's also important that we respect the US as a democracy, but also that friends and allies should respect each other's choices. We always will continue to have strong and robust relationships with our relevant counterparts in the United States and work together on areas of mutual interest, our economic prosperity, our security, and our work across the world. But robust political debate must always be done in a respectful environment.
Pam Cox.
Mr. Speaker, on the matter of European security, can I give my strong support to the position taken by the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary in relation to the Ukraine peace proposals recently? Does the Minister agree that there can be no deal affecting Ukraine without Ukraine, and that any deal that rewards Putin's aggression cannot proceed?
Minister.
I agree with my honourable friend.
Putin's press secretary has praised President Trump's new national security strategy as aligned with Russia's worldview. Meanwhile, a dark vessel was spotted in the Irish Sea at around the same time as an EU satellite detected 5 drones near the flight path of the plane carrying the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, en route to Dublin last week. Would she therefore urgently request an assessment from her colleagues in the Ministry of Defence of the risk posed by Russian hybrid threats, given that this US strategy is now being welcomed by Moscow?
Minister.
I thank the woman. She raises an important point. And we will continue to do all we can to make sure that we are able to ensure the security of everyone involved in seeking to achieve peace in Ukraine as well, and for Ukraine. And indeed, it is important to recognise that we must continue to work as an international community on this, and that it is a critical moment, and we must continue to ramp up support to Ukraine and economic pressure on Putin to bring an end to this barbaric war.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst the new US security strategy contains some elements that I think many across the House would find concerning, it also says that the US will seek peace everywhere. We all want to see a lasting and just peace in Ukraine, a sovereign Ukraine where the killing stops, where the 20,000 stolen children are returned to their families. So does the Minister agree with me that we must use all the influence we have with the United States to ensure that we step up the financial pressure on Russia and choke off their finances that sit behind this illegal war?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and indeed for all the work she does in relation to Ukraine and the children that have been kidnapped who must be returned to their families. And indeed, she is absolutely right. It is vital that not just the UK, but also our allies and across the world continue to put economic pressure on Putin to bring an end to what is an utterly barbaric war.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of a strategy's departure from decades of shared assumptions, will the government revise the 2025 National Security Strategy? And if not, why?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member. I will say that whilst, as I've said, the US, it is for the US to put forward its own strategy. The government's own national security strategy, which was announced by the Prime Minister earlier this year, sets out a whole-of-government approach to secure our nation, to pursue the interests of the British people, and to seize opportunities for growth. These do drive our work in the UK and indeed across the world. And as the Prime Minister has said, national security is the first responsibility of any government. And it does remain, the collective security does remain the foundation stone of our strategy to defend and deter against aggression. And as the Strategic Defence Review sets out as well, we're taking a NATO first but not a NATO-only approach. We will continue to work with the US on areas of national security and economic prosperity, as we do, who are natural partners for us and with whom we have a long-standing relationship that has endured and will always stand the test of time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United States is a long-standing and important ally, something we very much recognise in my own constituency, where on the Norfolk and Suffolk border there are two very large American military bases. Can I invite the Minister to recognise the significant contribution that thousands of American service personnel make to our local communities, socially, culturally, but also economically?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and I'm very happy to echo his sentiments and to thank those US troops who also make a contribution to our security. And indeed, the US is the UK's principal defence and security partner. The depth of our defence relationship with the United States remains an essential pillar of our security. And the UK is deepening defence, security and foreign policy ties with the United States to uphold those peace and security objectives, particularly also in the Indo-Pacific and North Atlantic. We also have AUKUS, the Carrier Strike Group 2025 deployment, and our nuclear collaboration as other examples of where we work together to respond to a more contested and indeed volatile world.
Mr. Speaker, doesn't the Minister think response from the government is extraordinarily low-key, acquiescent to a declaration by the US that it gives itself the right to interfere in the internal affairs of any country around the world that it thinks it doesn't agree with? This is an extraordinary state of affairs. And will she make any comment on what is actually an act of piracy by the US in the Caribbean by seizing an oil tanker and taking it into its custody with no basis in international law for that action, no basis of any kind of military threat to the United States being made, and it seems to me to be wholly illegal within international law? Minister.
I thank the Right Honourable Member, and he will have heard me say that whilst it is ultimately for the US to decide their own strategy, that there are parts of it that we disagree with. And it is important that as we respect the US as a democracy, friends and allies should respect each other's choices. And you can have robust political debate, but you should do so in an environment of respect. And in relation to Venezuela, I believe he was referring in his question, this was a decision taken by the US Department of Justice in coordination with the FBI, the Department of Defense and other US agencies, and it is for them to answer questions on that decision.
Chris Law.
Trump's White House parroting pro-Russian narratives around the peace plan in Ukraine, or the abhorrent language of describing Europe as facing civilizational erasure. What is clear is a strong transatlantic relationship is no longer critical to US national security. Chatham House has described this national security strategy as about commercial deals and authoritarian accommodation. So can the Minister agree that the idea of calling this a special relationship that's been enduring for many decades has now come to an end?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we commend and fully support President Trump's efforts towards securing peace in Ukraine. And it is important that as part of that process as well, the Prime Minister welcomed President Zelensky, Macron and Chancellor Merz to Downing Street this week. And the Foreign Secretary also met with Secretary Rubio and others in Washington, DC on Monday this week to discuss negotiations and the path to an agreement. And the Defence Secretary was also in Washington this week. Our ties remain strong, and we have many conversations in public, but also many conversations in private, as the Honourable Member would expect for nations working together for peace and security around the world. We are also clear that matters relating to Europe will involve Europe. And that's why this week, when the Prime Minister met with leaders in Downing Street, it was to review and discuss how we can support Ukraine to achieve a just and lasting peace.
Bobby D.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we should tiptoe around this issue. The section on Europe talks of civilisational erasure. It says that the continent will be unrecognisable in 20 years. They say that they want Europe to remain European, and that within a few decades NATO members will be majority non-European. I think we need to recognise this for what it is. It's a document rooted in racist, white supremacist ideology, and it should be called out accordingly. The Minister has talked about respect, but they are currently showing us none. Mr. Speaker, I think mild disagreement will not cut it. History is watching us. So will the Minister take this opportunity to call that language out?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Member, and he will have heard me say as well, in relation to those comments of civilisational erasure, that I don't agree. And I'm proud of our country. I know that migration is an essential element of Britain's national story. We are a thriving multicultural society, and I'm proud of that, and we will stand up for our values in the UK and across the world.
Shukka Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for that answer. The rhetoric coming out of the US is frightening people, even in my constituency, because it's really building a wedge between communities, with the strategy citing civilization erasure, saying several countries risk becoming majority non-European. But they have also declared that the US must cultivate resistance within European countries. I'm glad to hear the Minister doesn't agree with those sentiments, but can I ask what she will do to strengthen the diversity against this really divisive ideology in this country?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Member, and he will have heard me say that as we respect the US as a democracy, we do expect that friends and allies should respect each other's choices and their traditions. And it is important that we have an environment in which we can have debate that is not divisive, and it is important that we defend our democracies, and it is important that robust political debate should always be in an environment of respect.
We now come to Jim Shum.
Can I thank the Minister very much for those very careful responses to encapsulate where we are. It is incredibly concerning that President Trump continues to assist in weakening Europe, and there are now dangers of the US abandonment of support in the Russia-Ukraine war. Given the Prime Minister's supposed strong relationship with the United States and with President Trump in particular, what steps will the Minister take to ensure that we are committed to working together to deliver stronger outcomes for Ukraine and for the Ukrainian people, and that Russia must be held accountable for their devastation that they have caused?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Member, and indeed he always asks the extremely pertinent questions in relation to these matters. He will have heard me say how important it is that we continue to work closely with the United States to strengthen Euro-Atlantic security through NATO, to support Ukraine, to see an end to the war, a war that President Putin could end tomorrow if he chose, and to also make sure that he is held accountable for his actions. And it is important that we deepen our cooperation on emerging technologies and economic security, and to say that our commitment to NATO and to European security and to making sure that we work together across Europe to step up on defence spending remains a priority, and our commitment is ironclad.
That completes the urgent question. Let the front bench change over. Right, we now come to business questions. Shadow Leader of the House, Jesse Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.